All right, good morning. I'd like to call this meeting of the House Labor and Industry Committee to order. Jonathan, please take a roll.
Dawkins,
Here.
Brennan, Donahue,
Here by designation.
Jarrell, Green,
Here.
Haddock,
Here by designation.
Kincaid,
Here by designation.
Krajewski, Mursky, Miller,
Here by designation.
O'Mara,
Here by designation.
Scott,
Here.
Siegel, Young,
Here by designation.
Grove,
Here.
Anderson, Barger, Bernstein,
Designation.
Cooper,
Designation.
Diorsi, Ecker,
Designation.
Fink, Gleim, Jones,
Designation.
Reichard, Rossi.
Designation.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. First, I would like to call up House Bill 1358, printer's number 1546, introduced by Representative Green. Ryan, please explain the bill.
House Bill 1358 requires hotel employers to provide safety devices to employees who work in guest rooms alone that allow the employee to summon immediate assistance for their safety or well-being. It also creates an educational program for employees on related topics and establishes penalties for violations of the Act.
Thank you. I would like to recognize the prime sponsor of the bill, Representative Green, for brief remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My legislation, House Bill 1358, I apologize for my voice. I actually do feel better than I sound. My legislation, House Bill 1358, will require hotel workers to provide safety devices like a panic button to their employees who work alone in guest rooms. A survey of women working in the Chicago hospitality industry found that 58% of hotel workers have been sexually harassed by guests, and 49% of housekeepers reported having had guests answer the doors naked, expose themselves, or flash them. Of the workers who were sexually harassed by guests, 56% said they did not feel safe returning to work. Importantly, 96% of housekeepers surveyed said that they would feel safer if they were equipped with a panic button. The hotel and hospitality industry experiences some of the highest rates of workplace sexual assault and harassment, and women make up the majority of the hospitality workforce. This is due to the isolated nature of hotel housekeeping work, unequal power dynamics between hotel workers and guests, and resistance from management to take actions against a problematic guest. In 2018, the American Hotel and Lodging Association announced the 5-Star Promise, a pledge to provide hotel workers across the U.S. with employee safety devices and commit to enhanced policies, trainings, and resources to improve hotel safety, including preventing and responding to sexual harassment and assault. According to the organization's website, nearly 60 member companies represented an estimated 20,000 hotel properties have made the pledge, but only approximately 5,000 hotels have implemented employee safety devices, which leaves too many workers at the risk of harassment or assault. Everyone deserves to work in an environment that is safe and free from harassment. I urge the members to support this legislation. Mr. Chairman, I've had members of my own family work in the hospitality industry, young, and the stories that they have told me and shared with me are horrific. So I just encourage all of my colleagues to support this bill and let workers know that we care and that we are concerned about their safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Now the question is, will the committee report the bill? Are there any comments or questions on House Bill 1358? I now acknowledge the minority chair.
Thank you, Chairman. Let me first, I want to address our last voting meeting. I watched it online 3 times. I got to say I was highly disappointed in the actions this committee, how it was operated. I hope we can do better moving forward. It was an embarrassment to this institution. All sides. I was dumbfounded, completely dumbfounded watching that freaking hearing. The amount of text messages and calls I got, it was unbelievable. So I pledge to do better. I hope my colleagues pledge to do better. This is a professional job. We're doing the people's business. Our job is important. We're elected professionals, and we need to act like it at all times. So I'm 100% committed to doing that. I hope my colleagues will join me in that endeavor. House Bill 1358 is a bill we had last session. My understanding, it was brought forward from a survey that was done out of Chicago. And it's very unclear whether that survey had any scientific backing. It was done by 5 union leaders. It's not clear whether the surveyed workers represent a cross-section of all hotel workers, whether union or non-union. It's not clear whether the study includes hotels with more than 150 rooms. We don't know what kind of hotels, where those hotels were located. It did not include any Pennsylvania hotels or any input from Pennsylvania, just Chicago only. I don't even know if it was outside of Chicago or just a Chicago issue. I just don't think we should be legislating based on one single survey. The Pennsylvania Restaurant and Lodging Association, the most directly impacted stakeholder, offered several suggestions to this legislation last session. The committee did try to adopt it, was not adopted. There was an amendment filed. Issues with the bill: it broadly defines hotel employer so broadly that the definition will include the union leaders who would negotiate a contract with the employees. The bill allows collective bargaining agreements to supersede the requirements even when the CBA provides less protection to an employee. There probably should be a uniform standard between the two. The bill makes L&I provide employers with educational programs that go beyond the scope of the use of safety alert devices and employee rights. The educational program should be consistent with the rest of the bill. The penalties of the bill are far too steep. They should be lowered to commensurate with the nature of the violations. Last session, there was a bipartisan bill adopted on the floor to increase the threshold to 150 rooms. That is also not included with this, so you're going to capture a lot of small mom-and-pop hotels through the process. So, for all those reasons, I'm asking for no vote on the bill. And let me be clear: the intent of the prime sponsor is for safety. She obviously cares about this issue very much. This has nothing to do with that view. It's just the process and how this is drafted and the impact on the industry. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Representative DeOrsey.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments and/or questions here. First, I just want to reiterate what Chairman Grove said. It's my understanding that the motivation of the bill is based on a single survey from Chicago, and although I share his view that, safety is paramount, not arguing about that, I just think it's odd that the motivation of the bill is based on a single Chicago survey. I'm not sure how that translates to prospective Pennsylvania law. And then a pair of questions here. Page 2, line 18. I'm wondering if that definition would include homeless shelters.
Which line is that you're looking at?
Page 2, line 18, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. So Representative, we'll get back to you to define if a homeless shelter falls under that category.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If indeed it does, and as I'm reading it plainly, it probably does, I would hope, since it's probably not the intent of the author of the bill, that we try to clean that up with an amendment on the House floor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Final question here. So the bill talks about devices, safety devices, panic buttons, two-way radios, similar technology. I made this argument last year. I looked up on my phone's app store many different options of technology, many of which are free mobile apps that not only accomplish what I think this bill is endeavoring to do, but possibly even would do a better job. I just want to list a few. Zello, Life360, Be Safe, Circle of Six, PubSafe SOS. These are all free. They have functionality for local location sharing, group communication, real-time voice communication, and SOS alarms. So I just want to pose the question to the author of the legislation or any contributor, had it been considered that here in 2025 we have the technological ability to simply have a free mobile app as opposed to a costly mandate?
So we absolutely looked at all those options. The problem we have, if someone is being assaulted in real time, do they have time to pull out their phone to an app versus hitting something that may be on their body that can like alarm, officials that they're being harassed at this moment? As we all know, we have seen the climate in our country right now, and panic buttons and distress buttons are now really something that we're talking about. And in a critical time in this country, even in this room, we all have a phone, we all have apps, but there is still a distress button in this room for a reason. Because if someone's being attacked, it's real time that we have to be able to respond, which is why we're looking at this option. Thank you. Representative Green.
I just want to follow up about the Chicago remarks. My family didn't work in Chicago. My family worked here in Philadelphia. If someone is getting raped, how much do we want to put, what value do we want to put on their life? Because a panic button costs between $18 and $50. So what is the message to women? That we don't care, that we want to pull out a phone, or that we want to make sure that they're safe in an environment that they shouldn't even be in when it comes to someone trying to attack them or rape them or sexually assault them? What are we saying? So it may say Chicago, but I can guarantee you that there's stories right here in Philadelphia. And it doesn't take a survey. All it takes is one for a woman to be destroyed, for her life to be destroyed. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any other members want to be recognized? We'll seeing none. I would like to thank the maker of this important legislation that seeks to protect vulnerable workers. We've had this bill run out of this committee before, and I remember we cited it was a sex ring in Carlisle County that had a significant amount of individuals who were being assaulted. And this is one of the examples we were using, but there's many accounts of these stories across Pennsylvania. And, we want to make sure we can do whatever we can do from this committee to make sure that we are ensuring a little bit more of a safety requirement. And, a panic button, I believe, is something that we could do that doesn't bankrupt the Commonwealth to provide some safety to the individuals. So, Jonathan, with that, can you take the roll?
Dawkins,
Yes.
Brennan. Yes. Donahue. Yes. Jarrell. Yes. Green. Yes. Haddock. Yes. Kincaid.
Yes, by designation.
Krajewski. Yes. Mursky. Yes. Miller.
Yes, by designation.
O'Mara.
Yes, by designation.
Scott.
Yes.
Siegel.
Yes.
Young.
Yes, by designation.
Grove.
No.
Anderson. No. Berger. No. Bernstein.
No by designation.
Cooper.
No by designation.
Diorsi. No. Ecker.
No by designation.
Fink. No. Gleim. No. Jones. No. Reichard. No. Rossi.
No by designation.
The bill passes.
Thank you. House Bill 1358 is favorably reported as committed. I would now like to call up House Bill 1540, printers numbers 1811, introduced by Representative Siegel. Ryan, please explain the bill.
House Bill 1540 establishes the Buy America, Buy Union grant program within the Department of Community and Economic Development to reimburse political subdivisions and authorities for a portion of the cost of procuring vehicles that are made in America with union labor.
Thank you. I would now like to recognize the prime sponsor, Representative Siegel, for brief remarks on the legislation.
Thank you, Chairman. It's no secret in this country now we're talking about how we can basically reshore and bring back domestic manufacturing jobs that we've lost over the last, frankly, 40 years and more distinctly the last 25 years. Since 2000, we've lost nearly a quarter of our domestic manufacturing base. It's about 5 million jobs, many of which were union. And I think the premise of this legislation is simple, straightforward. It's pro-worker, it's pro-America, and it's pro-American manufacturing. And the idea is that any time we expend public tax dollars in this Commonwealth, any time a municipality is buying a fire truck or a police car or a snowplow or a refuse truck, let's make sure that those tax dollars support an American manufacturing complex where the workers in that complex and the workers in that plant are subject to a collective bargaining agreement, because we know that unions mean better wages, better benefits, better health care, and a better standard of living for American workers. And we want to make sure we encourage municipalities to be pro-America and pro-worker when they are sourcing the vehicles that they're going to use in service to their taxpayers. And in order to move procurement in that direction, let's have the Commonwealth step up and incentivize that behavior by ensuring that 20% of that cost associated with buying those American-made vehicles will be reimbursed. I think this is common sense legislation that will make sure that public tax dollars in the Commonwealth are spent in a value-based manner, that stand with workers, that stand with American manufacturing, and help us here in the Commonwealth do our part to make sure that when we do reshore jobs, when we do bring back domestic manufacturing, that it is for the benefit of the American workforce, the American worker, and the American family. So I'd encourage all my colleagues to affirmatively move this bill forward and do the right thing for the American people. Thank you.
Thank you. The question is, will the committee report the bill? Chairman Grove will be offering amendment A01095. Andrew, please explain the amendment.
Amendment 1095 by Chairman Grove removes the union requirements from the bill.
Thank you. The question is, will the committee agree to this amendment? I now recognize Chairman Grove.
So this is about competition for American businesses, whether you are union or non-union. We know that unions make up a very small percentage of the overall workforce in the United States and even in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. By restricting the ability of procurement of entities purchasing equipment, vehicles, etc., you limit the ability of United States manufacturing all across the United States, particularly here in Pennsylvania. We shouldn't create winners and losers in an economic system. This does. By removing it, we will ensure that we buy American first, regardless of what kind of labor one uses, because the purpose of this is to advance the United States and Pennsylvania manufacturing. So in fairness of our market labor policies, we should have a fair and open and free market where everybody can participate. Not close down an economy to the very, very few labor jobs that are left. So that is the purpose of the amendment, for openness and making sure that all Americans benefit from it, just not a select few. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Jones.
I apologize, Chairman. I was going to comment on the bill, if that's all right.
Okay, that's fine. Representative Sequel? You can respond to the amendment.
Yeah. Thank you, Chairman. Look, to be frank, I've heard this argument since I got to the legislature. We don't want to pick winners and losers. We pick winners and losers all the time in this building. We have tax subsidies and tax credits for all manners of businesses in the Commonwealth. We subsidize the oil and natural gas industry. We want to subsidize renewable energy here in the Commonwealth, the EDGE tax credit. I'm okay with that. I think that it's important that the Commonwealth step forward and step up when it comes to making strategic investments in business. And to be very clear, when it comes to picking in winners and losers, I want to pick the American worker. I absolutely believe that it's important that public tax dollars be spent to make sure that we don't just bring back domestic manufacturing, but that the workers in that plant earn a living wage, they earn good benefits and good health care. To be clear, to vote for this amendment is to vote against the American worker, because we know that in unionized workplaces and unionized workers have better health care, better benefits, better retirement, far more than their non-union counterparts. In the 17 states with the highest union density, the average worker makes $6,000 more a year. In the 17 states with the lowest union density, the average worker earns $6,500 less. I can't imagine a world where we want to say to the workers, not just of Pennsylvania, but frankly the country, that we want you to make less, have worse benefits, have no paid time off, have no health care. I am unmistakably pro-union, and I believe that when it comes to picking winners, we should be picking American unions. The thing that best explains the decline in standard of living and the rise in income inequality and wage inequality is the fact that the American labor movement has been decimated in this country, that we have gone out of our way to make it harder for workers to collectively bargain, harder to come together. And I know that this country was strongest when union density was at its peak. So we should reject this amendment soundly, because we should not be saying to the American people and to Pennsylvania workers, you're worth less, you deserve less. They deserve the absolute best, and I want a workforce in this country that has health care, retirement, paid time off, and a wage that allows them the prosperity and security that the past afforded. So let's reject this amendment and let us make sure that we pick a winner here, and let's pick the American worker.
Thank you. Representative Anderson.
You know, I completely disagree with the fact that this bill and many of these bills are pro-worker. It's pro 10% of the workforce, considering 90% are not a part of unions. So what you're saying is we are promoting that 10%. So if you want to say this is pro-worker, great, it's pro 10%. Mathematically, I wasn't a math teacher, but I can tell you then it's anti 90% of the workforce. Let's be honest about this. Let's not confuse unions and American. I have nothing against the unions, but this is a union bill. There is no American worker PAC. There are lots of union PACs. So let's be honest about what this bill really is. It is picking not only businesses over some businesses, but is prioritizing regular American middle-class people that are trying to put food on the table. It's picking 10% over the 90%. This amendment is appropriate. If we are going to vote for the American worker, then we should be voting for all of the American workers, not a select few. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Any other member?
Can I just respond to that,
Yep,
Chairman?
yep. Representative Siegel, you can respond.
Just briefly, I'd like to say the good gentleman, when he highlights the fact that there is a majority of the American workforce that is not currently benefited from a union collective bargaining agreement, that is not currently under the benefits of a union, that is the problem. That is, in fact, the reason for this legislation. That is the issue. In the 1950s, when union density was closer to 33%, it's no surprise that there was significantly less wage and income inequality. You're absolutely right that there are very few Americans left in the country that are underneath the auspices of a collective bargaining agreement, and that is the problem. That is the issue. It's that we should aspire for more Americans to be able to join a union. I want more folks to be organized by the UFCW and the United Steelworkers and AFSCME. I want more folks to be able to demand that their employers pay them a living wage and a fair share. See, we've had this discussion many times over. You can be pro-work and not pro-worker, and that's what this is. This is pro-worker and pro-work. You can support restoring American manufacturing. You can support big business. You can support bringing back all the jobs you want, but let me tell you this. Look back to the Gilded Age and the industrial era before the American government had the backs of the American worker, and I can promise you that just because you bring jobs back does not mean that standard of living is going to go up. We saw it here in this Commonwealth before unions had full strength. Go back to the days when the Monongahela was filled with ash and coal dust and it was no longer safe to consume. Go back to the days when the skies were choked with smog from the factories and workers lived in huts and shanty towns adjacent to the factories. That wasn't good for the American worker. That wasn't pro-worker. It wasn't until labor unions came and collectively organized folks and stood up to the power of the Carnegies and Vanderbilts, and the American government had their back, that the American people actually benefited from industry and industrialization. And that's what this legislation seeks to do, is balance the scales again and bring us back to an era when the American workers made a living wage. And I hope that this encourages more workers at their respective plants to bargain, to organize, to come together, because that's what we want to encourage. Yes, we want to pick winners and we want to pick unions. Absolutely.
Thank you. Representative Barger.
I just want to say I agree with my Democrat colleague that a vote against this amendment is a vote against the American worker. Thank you for pointing that out.
That's it. Well, thank you. Any other member? All right. Seeing none. So this is always where we get to this crossroad where I always believed when I was growing up that the union was synonymous with being an American. Because those same jobs that I keep hearing about that we want to bring back, those manufacturing jobs that have went overseas, correct me if I'm wrong, they were union jobs that left. And those are the times that we're trying to get back to. And that was the one thing collectively I thought we agreed on from both sides of the aisle that we want to see the American worker back and restored to what we believe was a time that was great. That's what I hear over and over and over. But what I'm also hearing in that same breath is that we don't want the actual worker. We just want the opportunity to make the money and the profit. So you want the profit, but you don't want to actually restore the worker. But we're telling the worker we want to restore the worker. At some point, the voters are going to wake up to the idea that they're being hoodwinked here by some of our words. This amendment, in my opinion, is offensive when we try to strip out the very thing that we know provided prosperity to so many Americans right here in this country. So for those reasons, I absolutely would oppose this amendment, and I'm going to ask Jonathan to take the roll.
Dawkins?
No.
Brennan? No. Donahue? No. Gerald? No. Green? No. Haddock? No. Kincaid?
No by designation.
Krajewski?
No by designation.
Mursky?
No.
Miller?
No by designation.
O'Mara?
No by designation.
Scott? Siegel?
No.
Young?
No by designation.
Grove?
Yes.
Anderson? Yes. Barger? Yes. Bernstein?
Designation, yes.
Cooper?
Designation, yes.
Diorsi? Yes. Ecker?
Designation, yes.
Fink? Yes. Glime? Yes. Jones?
Yes.
Reichard? Yes. Rossi?
Designation, yes.
The amendment fails.
Thank you. The amendment A01095 is not agreed to. Representative Barger will be offering amendment A0113. Andrew, please explain the amendment.
Amendment 1113 by Representative Barger requires that an applicant pass a resolution or other action specifying that they will fully comply with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, including access to all facilities, cooperation with detainer requests, and report undocumented individuals.
Thank you. The chair makes the motion that amendment A01113 is unconstitutional. Let me just explain to you why I say that. The 10th Amendment reserves the states, by the extension of their political divisions and subdivisions, every power that the Constitution has not delegated to the federal government. The Supreme Court's an anti-commandeering doctrine first articulated in New York versus United States in 1992. It was sharpened in the Pence versus the United States in 97, reaffirmed in the Murphy versus the NCAA in 2018. It prohibits Congress from conscripting states or local governments to implement, administer, or to enforce federal regulatory schemes. In Pence, for example, the court struck down a requirement that the county sheriffs perform federal background checks, holding that Congress cannot compel the states to enact or administer a federal regulatory program. This amendment does exactly what those decisions forbid. It obligates local applicants to grant ICE full entry and access, detain or transfer people at ICE requests, and to have affirmatively report anyone that they suspect of unlawful presence. For those reasons, I say this is unconstitutional. I will now recognize the chair and the maker to be able to speak on the motion. So, chair recognizes Chair Grove.
Thank you. So, number one, the legal standing the majority chairman cited is actually an act of Congress. This is not an act of Congress. And two, this is not compelled. This is part of a grant application process. So it's not compelled on any local jurisdiction. In order to receive the grant, you just need to make sure that you're complying with federal ICE regulations, making sure that you follow through with detainers. We know we have a lot of issues with criminal illegal aliens in this country, rapists, murderers that are released early and perpetrating crime on American citizens. They should be deported, sent back to their home countries, and face prosecution here in the United States and back at home. This will ensure that we do not create sanctuary places for criminal illegal aliens in this country. And it is constitutional because it is not compelled. A local jurisdiction does not need to abide by it, but if you want to apply for this grant, if you care about American workers, if we're discussing American First policy that you're trying to do in this bill, we should ensure the safety of Americans at all times. So this amendment is 100% constitutional and gets to the heart of a major problem we have in this country to make sure that our local governments are assisting our federal counterparts in adjudicating justice in this country. And I'll reserve the rest of my time to the prime sponsor.
Thank you. Prime sponsor, Barker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's, I think the motion that this amendment is unconstitutional fails a sniff test, as Chairman Grove pointed out. This is not a act of Congress. This is a grant application that a municipality can choose to apply for or not to apply for. And I think it's wholly appropriate for this body to insist that municipalities, if they're participating in granting programs, are actually following the law and supporting law enforcement. So I do share Chairman Grove's viewpoint that if we are going to be promoting America First legislation such as this, we should be very clear that those organizations that are receiving grant monies are actually following the law. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Riker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 1984, Congress passed a Transportation Act that tied federal transportation dollars to states setting the minimum drinking age to 21. And this was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court, where legislation and funding can be tied to certain policy objectives. So I believe the U.S. Supreme Court has upheld similar type of legislation in the past. This just mirrors that. It ties 20% discount or a 20% grant to certain policy objectives. So I agree with the maker of the amendment. This is fully constitutional. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jonathan, can you take the roll on constitutionality?
Dawkins?
No.
Brennan? No. Donahue? No. Giroll? No. Green? No. Haddock? No. Kincaid?
No by designation.
Krajewski?
No by designation.
Mirsky?
No.
Miller?
No by designation.
O'Mara?
No by designation.
Scott?
No by designation.
Siegel?
No.
Young?
No by designation.
Grove?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Barger? Yes. Bernstein?
Yes by designation.
Cooper?
Yes by designation.
Diorsi? Yes. Ecker?
Yes by designation.
Fink?
Yes.
Gleim?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
Reichard?
Yes.
Rossi?
Yes by designation.
The amendment's ruled unconstitutional.
Thank you. Amendment
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, I am here.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see you.
I'm at work.
Okay. Amendment A01113 was voted down as unconstitutional. We are now going to move on to House Bill 1540. I will now recognize the Minority Chair Grove. You want to go? You want to go? Okay. Well, Representative Jones, you wanted to be on the. Okay, you're in order.
Thank you, Chairman. A couple comments and a couple questions, if they can either be addressed or if you want to treat them as rhetorical. I don't know how many of you watched the movie Dead Poets Society years ago. There's a great line in there. There's a very smart, well-educated, arrogant young man played by Matt Damon, and then there's his older mentor, Robin Williams. And Damon's character is extremely well-read, extremely intelligent. But Williams points out to him at some point in the movie, he said, "You've read the books, taken the test, but you never lived it." So for those of you that might not have been around as long as I have and lived it, you should have been in York, Pennsylvania back in the late 90s. When the unions, the UAW, and there's plenty of blame to go around, but the UAW chased 1,800 jobs out of York, Pennsylvania, the largest and best manufacturing employer. When you saw families ripped apart because the York plant was used as a pawn in bigger negotiations, and those jobs went to North and South Carolina, and many of those families had to relocate, or fathers and sometimes mothers, typically fathers, especially then, had to move to North Carolina away from their families. Go back and live through what happened in Bethlehem and much of Pittsburgh when these plants shut down, because it wasn't just about wages and benefits. It was about nonsensical work rules and abuse of employers, and employers can go elsewhere. I lived what happened in York, Pennsylvania. My father worked for Caterpillar, and yes, I had a lot of benefits working in the UAW household, but ultimately, all of those jobs are gone. With that said, a couple of questions, comments, I guess, first. Just to clarify, we could have a non-union Pennsylvania manufacturer who is going to lose out to a union out-of-state manufacturer. If this was a Pennsylvania-made bill, it might make some sense. There's 20 right-to-work states across the country. So now you're going to get a manufacturer in, let's say, Nebraska or South Carolina or any other right-to-work state. Or I'm sorry, reverse that. I apologize. A union manufacturer out of state is going to be given priority over a Pennsylvania non-union manufacturer. I really struggle to understand how that benefits Pennsylvania workers. Further, let's talk about some of the facts or supposed facts that were stated here. Now, I'm relying on some Google searches and AI, so I will caveat that these have not been thoroughly vetted, Mr. Chairman. But it looks to me like non-union Tesla, which makes the two most American cars in the world, as far as American-made content, pays significantly more in salary and benefits than Ford and General Motors. Honda and Toyota looks to me like they pay a little bit more than Ford and General Motors, and they are generally non-union shops. Ford and GM are generally union shops. Back out the union dues, and I'm pretty confident that those workers make out better. So the whole premise that union workers, particularly in the industries targeted here, make more and have better benefits than their non-union counterparts, as best I can tell, is a false statement. Two more. In these open shops, this is a question, in these right-to-work states, and I had relatives in Virginia that lived through this. In that case, it was Crown Cork and Seal in Winchester, where I had some family members in the union, some not in the union. Would those qualify if there's a collective bargaining agreement, but not all of the employees fall under it? So you can have a union in a right-to-work shop in 20 states in the U.S., where some of the employees are unionized and some are not. I'd like to know under this bill if they do or don't qualify, because I don't see that addressed. And lastly, I'm curious if the maker or any others are familiar with the most iconic U.S. brand in history known as Harley-Davidson. Because I look at what this applies to. Buses, passenger cars, school buses, school vehicles, and trucks. I would hope with such in-depth love and knowledge of unions that you might be aware that every Harley-Davidson that's assembled in the United States is assembled 30 minutes down the road with union workers in York, Pennsylvania, and for some reason, those guys don't count. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, I'm opposed to the bill.
Thank you. Representative Gleim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have just three simple questions. Is the purpose of the 20% grant intended to offset the markup caused by union labor costs?
No.
What is the purpose of the 20% grant, 20% markup?
Is the portion of the procurement cost.
Procurement. Okay, thank you. Has an impact study been conducted to assess how this legislation will affect the 90% of workers who are not unionized?
I think when we talk about this 90%, or do we have a report that states that there's only 10% of workers are union?
I'm pretty sure the U.S. Labor and Statistics has that report for you, sir.
That's that the one you're citing?
Yes.
Okay.
Have we done an impact study?
Not for this particular bill, no.
Okay. And does this grant impact CoStar's program at all?
You said CoStar?
Yes, CoStar's.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay, well, I can explain to you what CoStar's is.
Sure.
Because most municipalities and school districts use this CoStar's program where they can actually procure at a cheaper price any vehicle or any equipment that they need through that. And it doesn't necessarily need to be, American-made or anything like that. But that's what they're using, and it's a contract that they're currently in. So if this legislation goes through, I'm wondering how that impacts all of the contracts throughout the state that are already contracting with CoStar's.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. Okay. But it is a program that's designed to lower cost and qualifies in this grant as well.
Say
So
the
does
question
the
again.
actual contract then, if a school district is using CoStar's, can they also use this grant?
It's my belief so, but again, I'm not familiar with CoStar, so I would have to get back to you on that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Those are
Thank
my
you.
questions.
Representative Barker?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief question for the maker of the bill. Do you believe that there is value to contracting with a union shop or buying union-made products?
Siegel?
Do I think there's value? Do I think it's beneficial? Do I think it's good?
Yeah, is there a value to it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the entire intent.
Do you think that
and-
value is pretty clear?
I would say so. Yeah. I believe the
the-
value of a union is well documented, and
Okay.
quantifiable. Absolutely.
So then my follow-up question is, if the value of contracting with union shops is if there is a value and that value is clear, then why are you suggesting that we use taxpayer dollars to bribe people to do business with union shops?
It's not bribery. It's an incentive program. Municipalities can
Tomato,
continue.
tomato.
No,
It's-
not really. Municipalities
Oh,
can
yes,
continue.
really.
I'll finish my remarks
Yes,
in my
really.
response. It's an incentive-based program. Municipalities are
Why give the
complete-
incentive? Why isn't the value the incentive?
So Representative Barker, yeah, let him respond if you want to ask him a question.
The value is there, and I believe many municipalities would elect to take advantage of it. It's whether or not you believe that, at the end of the day, the owner of the business and the business itself should pocket all the profit and all the difference so the workers can. I mean, this is legislation that allows you to transparently put forward with your vote what side you're on. You can try to equivocate or misdirect or manufacture any alternative scapegoat or straw man you want. The truth is, if you believe that workers should reap the rewards of their labor and that they should benefit from the wealth that they build for the companies they work for, you should believe that they have the right to unionize. It's well documented that union workers earn more.
So my follow-up question is, if the value is clear, if there is a value, then why isn't that value incentive enough? Why do we need to use taxpayer dollars to provide additional incentive?
Well, I would levy that given your remarks, that there are folks like yourself who clearly don't believe that unions hold any value and don't believe that unions ought to exist, or don't seem to think that unions have any real value for the
Mr.
American.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
He's speculating as to my motives.
Well, do you believe unions are a good thing? Can I ask in response? Do you support the right to unionize, the right to organize a workplace?
So what we'll do, we'll keep it to the bill.
Sure.
'Cause look, I think we get the point. So Representative Barker, it is your time, so you can continue.
Yeah, to me, I think that if there is clear value, and I'm not saying that there isn't, there very well could be clear value. Why not let these municipalities, school districts, or whatever decide that, you know what, we do need to support these shops. There is value. It does help our communities. It does help our workforce. Why do we need to spend taxpayer dollars to sweeten the pot? If the value's there, let the value motivate people. If it isn't there, why bribe them? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Representative Anderson.
First, I'd like to say I learned something today. And, in class, I used to teach kids that judicial review determined the constitutionality of laws in 1803. I didn't know that we as committees could do so. So I did learn something today. We keep saying that it's well documented. You know, we were asked, Representative Gleim was asked where she got her statistics. Representative Gleim, I will correct you a little bit. You are correct. It's from the Bureau of Labor and Industry, but it's actually 7.8%, not 10, right off of their own website. We also talked about the Gilded Age, and I'm up for talking history anytime. And my colleague is correct. During the Gilded Age, workers were exploited, and it was horrible. And when we had unions and we established unions, they grew quickly to protect workers. In fact, in 1960, it got up to around 40%. So I think that is evidence that we needed unions at that time to represent exploited workers. I guess the question I would ask, since 1960, it has gone from 40% to 7.8. Those are not because people forced the unions out. It's because people chose not to be in the unions. We keep talking about this. Unions are best. Unions are best. I have absolutely no problem with the right to organize. But I believe very strongly that we, the people who do not want to organize, should have those same rights. I was in a field where many schools force their teachers into unions. And there is a plethora of teachers who do not want to be in the union. I used to say to my union leaders all the time, I'm much more prepared to negotiate my contract than you are. So there are millions. In fact, the numbers are about 12 million. Those 90% make up about 12 million workers in manufacturing. Has anybody done a poll or a study on how many of those 12 million do not want to be in a union? Because if they're working for companies like Tesla and making more and getting better benefits, I keep saying well documented. Where? Where is it well documented? I can say anything's well documented. I'm giving you the statistics from the Department of Labor and Industry, our sister organization within the federal government. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's not a pro-American bill. In the bill itself, it is a pro-union bill, and it is anti-90% of our workforce. And I do not want to confuse the two. American and union are not the same thing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Reichert.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just sort of following on Representative Gleim's comments about CoStars. Municipal work is sort of my background here. So I guess a question, if a municipality was to procure a vehicle from CoStars, is this going to work like I purchase something off of Amazon, I click to apply a 20% discount? I mean, what's the mechanism for this to work, since most of our municipalities are in fact procuring their vehicles through CoStars?
Ryan?
So it is a grant program that would occur after the fact. It does nothing to change procurement prior to a municipality or local authority purchasing a vehicle. Once a vehicle is purchased or procured, then the municipality or authority could apply to the Department of Community and Economic Development to receive up to 20% reimbursement.
And is that money set aside? I mean, is it guaranteed or is it competitive? Do they have to? Is one municipality competing against another one? Is when the pot is emptied? Is tough luck?
Sure. So on page 5, line 8, under distribution of grants under the program shall be dispersed on a first-come, first-served basis determined by the department until all money in the fund is exhausted.
So, those that purchased their stuff earlier in the year get the benefit, but those that are a little hesitant and get it later in the year, they might not have that money. So if our larger municipalities are applying for this at the beginning of the year, they will obviously receive this benefit, and our smaller folks that might be waiting later in the year might not have any money available to them.
Is that a question?
I guess. I mean, it's just sort of a statement of fact that it kind of.
Well, there was a lot of assumptions there. You're assuming that just because they're small, they won't be able to get their grant in on time, which I think is a huge assumption.
Well,
secondly, hold on, let me finish. You asked the question. Secondly, when we talk about any programs as subsidy based, they're always going to be first come, first serve, and they're going to be exhausted once that fund is exhausted. We have the same process for rental assistance and other programs that we offer throughout this Commonwealth, so it's no different than that. And all counties have the same opportunity to apply for those grants, but I think there's a huge assumption being made that because you're a larger county that you're somehow going to get there before the smaller counties get there to be able to take advantage of it.
Well, so an example that's come up in my district is with MOPEC, and that's a whole separate issue where what happens is these larger police departments gobble up all the money and there's nothing left for our smaller municipalities. So, you know, when a large authority or a large municipality purchases vehicles, they purchase a large quantity of vehicles, which would probably exhaust that fund pretty quickly, leaving very little for our smaller municipalities. That is a fact that some of my smaller municipalities are struggling with right now. There is no set aside, there is no carve out, there is no amount of money that is reserved for smaller municipalities to be able to take advantage of these funds. So what practically will happen is that our larger municipalities, when they make these large bulk purchases, will wipe out that entire line item, leaving very little left for our smaller municipalities.
Thank you. Representative Haddock?
Thank you. I just want to, twice we talked about Tesla, and I just did a quick Google search. $38 billion in subsidies and loans and tax credits to Tesla. So some of the companies that we're citing are definitely receiving almost the same type tax credits that we're talking about or grant programs. I just think $38 billion to Tesla. And, you know, part of the fallout in Washington was because they possibly could be stopping on the federal level, and Mr. Musk didn't like that.
Thank you. Any other member want to be recognized? Representative Grove.
Thank you. Hey, I'm all about getting rid of the corporate welfare myself, so Representative Haddock, you want to team up? We'll jet it all. Let everybody play equally. I'm good. Let the free market work. 100% with you. So listen, most municipalities, when they go to bid for stuff, it's a closed bid process, right? So people bid on it. They receive the bids, closed bid, they open them, and the cheapest wins, right? That's the way local governments do their bidding process. So for them to structure anything to say we're buying this specific one, that's a tough thing for local governments. School districts and buses, most of the higher percentage, I don't have the off the top of my head, but most of our school districts outsource their school buses. So they're not buying school buses directly anymore. When I look at, you know, our mass transit agencies, you know, their authorities, again, they have to bid on stuff. So I don't know, without getting rid of a bid process and allowing companies just to go to direct contracting, I don't know how this is actually going to functionally work in real life. Outside of you getting an award and you kind of fit in that niche that we're trying to go after for this. So maybe good idea, bad practice, I don't know. You know, on top of everything else, again, it was hit on numerous times. I, as a Pennsylvania state legislator, should never do anything to incentivize any other state. We're all in competition with them. I don't care if it's Michigan, California, Texas, or Florida. I want to destroy them all. That's our goal, right? Pennsylvania first, right? The fact that we're going to incentivize a California company over a Pennsylvania company is way outside of our scope. You know, maybe Pennsylvania first policy. I'm not in Congress. I have zero interest in Congress. My political career is winding down. God bless the rest of you. But I sure as heck don't want my legislators talking about incentivizing any other company or anything else but Pennsylvania. That is our job. We are Pennsylvania state representatives. Great Commonwealth. I don't even like the other Commonwealths. Not interested. I want to be number one in everything. That is my competitive nature, right? I just do not see value, whether it's the bidding process or incentivizing out-of-state companies to take our tax money at the disadvantage of Pennsylvania workers. And I don't care if you're union or non-union, don't care, go compete. If unions want to add people, God bless. If you want to get it up to 90%, go get them, right? You got to work for it, though, and you got to show people that you're a benefit. Obviously, the American economy has moved away from it. It is what it is. But go compete. Good luck. But again, this bill does not benefit Pennsylvanians. I have zero interest in incentivizing Florida, Texas, California, you name it. I don't care about the other states. I want Pennsylvania to prosper. This bill doesn't do that. I'm a no. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Green.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I agree. Let's talk about Pennsylvania first. Let's talk about Pennsylvania Americans. For 16 years, the minimum wage in Pennsylvania has been $7.25. They are Americans. Right here in this building, we have workers who want to join the union, and yet there's forces that prevent them from doing so. So if we want to protect Americans in Pennsylvania, let's raise the minimum wage to a living wage and allow Pennsylvania Americans to make more money so they can purchase more products in Pennsylvania. Thank you.
Thank you. And last speaker, to co-sponsor, the sponsor, Representative Siegel.
Thank you, Chairman. And I believe the good gentleman mixed up his Robin Williams movies, Dead Poet Society is a good film. I think he was referencing Good Will Hunting, I assume.
Yeah.
So I knew what you meant. The minute I assume I'm Matt Damon in that reference, and you look, you have a good likeness to Robin Williams. He was one of. It's all right. Listen. They're both great films. They're both solid Robin Williams movies. Look, this is this is as much real world as it is academic. This bill was inspired in part by the men and women who work at the UAW plant in the Lehigh Valley, the Mack Trucks plant. Last year, they had a union advocacy day, and they came to my office, and they had talked about the idea of legislation that would use public tax dollars to help onshore American manufacturing and help rebuild the labor movement here in the country. And they had said at the time that they couldn't find a legislative body that was willing to take that task on. They were talking about doing it in New York, and I decided, we talk about it a lot. Pennsylvania is usually behind the curve on things. I wanted the Commonwealth to be a leader in changing the way that we do business and in the way that we procure and source vehicles. Let me talk about what happens now in the status quo. When municipalities go out and buy vehicles, make no mistake about it, they're buying foreign-made vehicles. They're definitely purchasing them from foreign manufacturers. That means that public tax dollars are going to subsidize our adversaries and our foreign competitors. And as a Pennsylvanian and proud American, that is the absolute last thing that I want. I do not want public tax dollars in Pennsylvania financing Chinese or Japanese or, whatever, automobiles made anywhere outside of this country. And we considered trying to make it pursuant just to Pennsylvania, but we were cognizant of the fact that 40-plus years of anti-labor fervor in D.C. has decimated the American labor movement, and it's made it hard to just make it Pennsylvania specific. I'm reminded of the history of the UAW. It's actually 90 years ago that they were founded, 1935, and 2 years later they staged a sit-in strike in Flint, Michigan. And at the time, the governor of Michigan was a gentleman named Frank Murphy, and GM begged and pleaded with him to send in the National Guard, because all so often in that time, government sided with big business, and they sent in the police and the National Guard to break up strikes and evict workers and make sure that scab workers could get into the plant and take advantage of folks that were striking for their families. And at the time, Governor Murphy did send the National Guard in, and much to the chagrin of GM, they set up shop between the anti-union organizers that were sent by GM to break them up and the workers in the plant that were staging the sit-in. And the National Guard was actually there to protect those workers. And it was at that moment when GM realized they could no longer rely on the American and state government as an appendage of their ambitions that they came to the bargaining table and they finally recognized the UAW as a lawful, legitimate union. And they organized and negotiated their very first collective bargaining agreement. And that is ultimately one of the defining moments in the history of the American labor movement. Government picked a side. government chose once and for all who it was going to stand and side with, and they picked workers, not big business, not CEOs, not executives, not the Carnegies, not the Vanderbilts, not the Fords. They picked the American worker. And it was from that moment that the American labor movement did swell, did take over, did start to become a significant chunk of the overall workforce. And it was that drove the American middle class, because that's the truth. The American middle class, like the planes and steel and automobiles that they made, was manufactured. It didn't just manifest out of thin air. It wasn't created based on corporate charity. It was because workers bound together and fought back and demanded what was theirs. And it was the American government that had their back, that finally broke the corrupt bargain between big business and big government, that allowed workers to finally get a fair wage, a good benefit, and a decent day's pay. And that's ultimately what this legislation is about, is restoring that balance. We have had 40 years of anti-worker, anti-union dogma in this country. We've made it harder than ever for workers to organize and bargain and stand together. And legislation like this will help Pennsylvania, will help Pennsylvania workers, because if a municipality goes out and buys a heavy truck or a refuse truck, it could come from the Mack Trucks plant in the Lehigh Valley. And those union workers will benefit. But at the end of the day, we are all Americans, and I'm a very proud American, and I want to make sure that the American worker benefits over everyone else. And I want to make sure that we finally tell the American people which side we're on. Are we with the oligarchs and greedy, wealthy elite, or are we with working people who have been basically robbed for the last 40 years, had their wages depressed, their standard of living declined, their well-being exploited? And it's the American labor movement that's ultimately going to restore the prosperity and security that so many of us now long for and demand, because make no mistake, there is American middle class out there waiting to be born in the yet ununionized workplaces. They toil every day in the e-commerce facilities and in grocery stores across the country and the Commonwealth, and they deserve a union bargaining agreement just like everybody else. It's what built the middle class, it's what made it, and it's only when government once again picks a side, puts its tax dollars and its full weight and might behind the American worker, that we are going to restore the middle class. And we're going to unleash a new era of prosperity and security. And this legislation, in a very small form and very fashion, does that, starts the process. Can it do everything? Absolutely not. Am I saying it's the panacea to restoring American manufacturing? No, it can't do it alone. But it's a start. And it's Pennsylvania stepping up and leading by example. So I'm urging my colleagues to vote yes, to stand with the worker, and stand with something that is as American as apple pie and the American flag, the American Union. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, I believe all members said everything they need to say. Yeah, that's it. I urge all members to support this important legislation.
How do you like them apples?
Jonathan, take the roll.
Dawkins.
Yes.
Brennan. Yes. Donahue. Yes. Jarrell.
Yes, by designation.
Green. Yes. Haddock. Yes. Kincaid.
Yes, by designation.
Kujewski.
Yes, by designation.
Mursky.
Yes, by designation.
Miller.
Yes, by designation.
O'Mara.
Yes, by designation.
Scott.
Yes, by designation.
Siegel.
Yes.
Young.
Yes, by designation.
Grove.
No.
Anderson. No. Barger.
No.
Bernstein.
No by designation.
Cooper.
No by designation.
Diorsi. No. Ecker.
No by designation.
Fink. No. Gleim. No. Jones. No. Reichard. No. Rossi.
No by designation.
The bill passes as committed.
House Bill 1540 is favorably reported as committed. Seeing no other business, this meeting is now adjourned.